All right, ladies and gents, I had to do this video because I think we're at a real critical point in this whole Iran war, and I just want to talk to you guys about what I think is going to happen next, because I think we're going to see essentially a COVID style lockdown, and it won't even be forced by the government per se. Let me turn this down. Sitting here watching Professor Morandi give us an update in Iran. But what we're about to see, man, I was saying about 15 days is going to be something very COVID like in terms of economic impact here domestically, and of course globally is already hitting. You got to think of, people might be here in the United States very passe and relaxed and not on guard right now because ain't nothing really going on, right? We don't see extremely high gas prices to the point where people are uncomfortably affected by this. I paid $5.50. I said this on a live stream. I use premium in my cars. $5.50 at the gas pump a couple of days ago. Might have been even yesterday. So, the prices are starting to head higher, right? But it's not uncomfortable for most people yet. We're not there yet. But how you got to look at this whole Iran war, Strait of Hormuz situation. And by the way, yesterday, this morning, huge strikes by Iran on, I think, another oil facility in Bahrain, I believe, might have been somewhere, maybe in Kuwait, which puts more pressure on the supply of oil, right? Or the production of oil, which turns into supply. Now, here's the thing. This is what you got to think about and why I was saying another 10 days or so, you will see things get real tight. You got to think of this war as like a water hose. And in that water hose at one end where the water is flowing, right? You got to think of it. This is the best analogy I could come up with. It's like a huge water air bubble got trapped at the beginning, toward the beginning of the water hose, and now it's traveling. Big gap, right? Big gap, air pocket of just air in between the water. Maybe we can use oil because, it'd be kind of hard for that to stay intact, but something that has maybe a thicker viscosity or whatnot, right? Just think of that analogy as a air bubble traveling through a hose, and we are at the tail end of the hose. And that air bubble represents the crisis. And how large or how long that air bubble is depends on how long we stay closed. It kind of started at the beginning of the war. Things trickled down. And so we're now in week 5. So that bubble is 5 weeks long. But it isn't even that simple. It is not even that straightforward where we can just literally, in a literal fashion, look at it like it's a 5-week delay that's moving through this water hose. It's much deeper than that because you got to take into consideration fertilizer. You got to take into consideration what are they using? Helium for the chip manufacturers. You got to take into consideration, of course, oil, food, all these things. And then on top of that, you have to think about the actual structural damage to some of these facilities in the Middle East. So you're talking about 4 year delays on getting that stuff back online so you can have oil pumping again and natural gas pumping again. Now, I didn't even mention natural gas. So it is that 5-week long bubble is probably more like 6 to 1 year length in a gap that is traveling through the holes right now. It's traveling through the holes right now, and the front end of that bubble is going to be hitting the United States in about 10 to 15 days. So why do I say 10 to 15 days? Because it takes a month or so for oil, and maybe even like 2 months for oil to travel from the Strait of Hormuz. I'm talking specifically about the United States and even other locations like, it goes Strait of Hormuz. It goes down the east coast of Of course, some goes up through the Red Sea, but the oil that goes to the west goes down the east coast of Africa. Some of it gets stopped off at South Africa and other countries down there, and then you curl up and you head higher and you go across to the United States. The issue is, in about 10 days, we'll see the last tanker coming to the States, I believe. So at that point, that's when the front end of that bubble hits the US. And then that's when the countdown starts as far as when we are going to be inside of that air pocket of no oil. And again, we know everyone's saying, oh, we won't be that, well, at least Trump is saying we won't be that deeply affected by this because we produce so much oil and we're self-sufficient, and we primarily are. We primarily are self-sufficient. But because oil is set by a cartel, the OPEC, it doesn't matter that we're self-sufficient. The price of oil is set by a group of individuals or organizations. So if they got higher prices, then guess what? We got higher prices. So I'm seeing probably middle of April is when it's going to really start getting real tight for Americans, and then that's when they're, and so it doesn't even matter if Trump miraculously somehow ends this war. And I see a 9-10% chance that happens. But let's just say he ends this war. The damage is already done. The 6 month to a year length air bubble in that hose, and that analogy that I'm using in that hose has already been created and is already moving through the supply chain. So summertime is going to be, I think you're going to see price of jet fuel, kerosene, price of gasoline, diesel, of course, for the summertime is going to be at least another 50% in my projections, 50 to 60% higher than where we are right now. That's enough to really shut a lot of stuff down. And that's enough for people not to travel during the summer. It's enough for flights, driving, food costs is going to go up. You're going to see people. What was the term they used? Not shelter in place, but what was the term we used during COVID? I can't remember the term. But you're going to see people at home, not because the government told them to stay home, but because their pockets told them to stay home. So where does that put, and how does that frame crypto and what this channel is all about? If people can't afford to go to work every day, if people can't afford to even go to the grocery store like they normally would, or just take the kids somewhere over the weekend, if people can't do that, what makes you think they're going to be buying crypto? Now, one may say, okay, retailers aren't the driving force for crypto right now. Haven't been for a long time. Very true. That's very true. That's very true. But it eventually, kind of manifests itself within Wall Street and the commercial guys, right? The commercial Wall Street guys that are buying and selling crypto. It's going to trickle into private. They're going to be affected. It's going to trickle into private credit, all that stuff, which is already messed up. It's going to really slow up the demand for crypto in a major way, which might be the catalyst to really see the next leg down in crypto. And I'm not even adding into the fact that we have MicroStrategy, really the only sole entity propping up crypto right now for the last year and a half. What happens when they stop buying? And worse yet, what happens when they start selling? I won't even go that far. What happens when they stop buying? That is going to be devastating for crypto. So if you're trading, hey, the volatility is here. We're going to make money. We're going to be able to really capitalize off this volatility. So we shouldn't be concerned. But if you're long-term bag holders out there, you're watching this, you should be thinking about some things. You definitely should be thinking about some things. We are about to see a COVID style slow up in the U.S. economy, global economy, that ultimately may be worse than COVID. Will we see stimmies? Remember the stimmies? Will we see stimmy checks to float people through this energy crisis? Probably. That's the only solution we have here in America and across these other nations in the West. We have no solution other than to print and dilute the currency. But and you might say, well, diluting and weakening the dollar is going to increase the price of the assets priced in that currency, right? Sure. But when demand is dropping faster than the printing of new money, it's who's falling faster. And I think demand is going to be falling much faster than how much they can print more money. That's just my two satoshis on it, ladies and gents. I had to just drop that on this Easter Sunday. Happy Easter Sunday, by the way, for those who participate in that holiday. Apparently, Trump is now Muslim. He's out here saying praise be to Allah after he announces this morning that he's going to bomb everything in Iran if they don't come to an agreement by 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight, Sunday, Easter. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Is he tacoing? Is he for real? I actually think he's for real this time. I honestly think he's for real this time. I think he's going to just crash out and it's sad. It's a sad turn of events here in America. We got Pete Hicks. I didn't even realize he was as racist. I didn't know he was racist to the extent that he is. Hearing that he doesn't shake black and brown military members' hands. Hearing that he's firing a lot of black and brown and maybe women as well, but black and brown minorities. Let's just say minorities in the military right now. It's complete chaos, and you don't have to listen to what they say. You just have to watch what they do. That's how you know who's winning and who's not, who's real and who's fake. That's the type of people I hate. All right, your boy Crypto Blood. Make sure you guys tune in every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're doing live trading, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with Bloodalytics. Make sure you guys sign up if you want to actively trade and have some type of edge in the markets. Bloodalytics.com. Scalpalytics Pro V2 is out. I'm out of here, people.